All right, so we are live. I'm going to start with a brief introduction of the podcast. Then I'm going to introduce you, and then we're going to get into the questions. All right. So
Sure,
I'm going to do a screen share first. And could you please tell me if you can see my screen?
I can.
Okay, perfect. All right. So welcome to the Remarketing Podcast. My name is Jerome Lewis. I'm your host for today, and the Remarketing Podcast has two purposes. Our content is for marketing, tech, and business leadership. And we're for real estate agents, real estate investors, and real estate entrepreneurs. Now, again, to reiterate, we have two purposes. Our two purposes are one, for you, Jake, to spotlight you, your business, your service, or your product in a way that provides value to you, including market exposure and content creation. Number two is to educate and inform our audience and our listeners. All right, so today we have Jake Toyberman. Jake is an accomplished retail banking professional that switched to a full-time real estate career. As a licensed real estate agent at Homestar Realty, Jake is able to draw on his many years of banking experience and provide his clients with a new level of professionalism for all their real estate needs. As an agent, he advises clients on everything from searching for a property through negotiating, mortgage acquisition, and closing on the property of their dreams. As an investor and a landlord, Jake shares his experiences, both positive and negative, and helps his clients decide what is best for them, their business, and their family. Jake, welcome to the podcast. Happy to have you here.
Thank you for having Jerome.
Absolutely. So the way our structure works is I told you a little bit earlier, we like to do like a question answer format. But before we get into those questions and answers, what I want to do is I'm going to call on you and I want you to tell us in your own words, tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
I am a realtor that basically helps others to not just buy and sell a property, but really advocate for them. One of my biggest things that I have learned being an investor, which actually have been an investor a lot longer than a realtor, almost 10 years. So that vast knowledge of what landlords can anticipate and what potholes that are going to be in the future of future landlords is quite vast. And so a lot of folks do tend to lean on me for those types of resources.
Thank you, Jake. I appreciate that. And we're all about, we want to talk to people who are in real estate, involved, investing, real estate agent, doesn't matter. We want to talk about those people. So I have a few questions for you, and we're going to go down the line. We're going to start with some business questions, then we're going to go personal, and then we're going to go to the closing table, which I like to call it. That'll be the final round, right? So the first question that I kind of have for you, right, is in your opinion, what is the most important personality trait or strength that someone would need to work in your industry and your profession?
Hmm. Um, I think someone that has either thick skin or someone who does not really care too much about what others think of themselves. So if there's others that have a certain impression or like to have a certain type of appeal to them, if they are too busy worrying about what others are thinking, it causes or could completely deter someone's ability to get to their goals.
Okay. And I want to ask you like a follow-up question to that. And were you always, so basically you need to have tough skin and you can't really worry how others perceive you. Let me ask, were you always that way, or is it something that you developed in this career or another past career?
Well, actually, I am very sensitive to what others think of me. Honestly, I have the personality where I always want to be liked and appreciated and looked in the best light. But at the same time, just because it's my weakness doesn't necessarily mean that I can't be aware of it and do something about it.
So that's interesting because you're like, I always want to be liked. And I want to tell you from my perspective, ever since I've known you and met you, you've always been likable. So whatever you do, whatever your magic is, you got it. You got it going on. I've always liked you. I'm like, that's a very likable
Thank
guy
you.
here. So you're
The
welcome.
feeling is mutual.
Yeah. So, next question I have for you is, what is one piece of advice you would give to someone starting in your career? And I want to break that into two segments, right? So, you're an investor. You were an investor first, right? So, I want to get your perspective as an investor, right? And then I also want to get your perspective as a realtor, right? So, let's start first with the investor perspective.
Having a goal in mind, meaning why would someone want to become an investor? There has to be an underlying reason, a drive. Once you have an understanding of what that goal is, then to be able to get someone who has experience and can hold your hand through that process. But without actually having a goal, without having a vision, what the 3 to 5, 7 year plan is going to look like, it's very difficult and you could really, really hurt yourself and limit your growth potential.
Would,
On the, go ahead.
I was going to say, would you say on the retail side is the same? Is it different, or as a realtor?
On the realtor side is quite different. If I was to start from day one today, I would team up with a really strong producer or a team of producers that have a specialty, some sort of a specialty, whether it's working with investors, whether it's really strong on the buyer side or on the listing side. So this way you could get the best knowledge in the shortest amount of time and to be an asset to them, because folks nowadays need as much help as possible. I know I do.
Okay. And so I want to follow like a follow-up question. I get always like sometimes you get feedback, pushback, right? So in marketing, we say like you specialize in one thing and then later on you want to branch out, right? So I'm trying to align that to what you said in terms of specializing as a real estate professional, right? A lot of people they want to go wide, we call it, and do like just about everything. So do you have any aversions to going wide, or like why do you suggest specializing specifically?
Specifically specializing in buyers, for instance, being able to be a strong buyer's agent allows you to see how others on a listing side operate. Now you could see how others are protecting their clients on the listing side. You get to learn a lot more and be a better advocate.
Okay, appreciate that. So the next question, I appreciate having like dual agent people, right? Because you can answer like two different questions and get two different perspectives, right? So, well, the same question. And the next question I have for you, did you always want to be a realtor, right? And then the next question after that will be, did you always want to be an investor?
I never even thought about being a realtor. I've always wanted to be a banker. And right out of college, I was a banker, and I loved it. And being a banker, I realized that a lot of the time, a lot of my clients are in fact investors, and they had a quality of life that it was quite intriguing, and they owned properties, and that is where I started to dabble and purchase rental properties.
Right. Okay, appreciate that. So you knocked out both questions with that one. And next, I want to get into like the personal questions a little bit. So we want to learn about Jake like as a person. So if you could be remembered for one thing, what would that be?
I want to be known for helping others. Really, at the end of the day, it's all about positioning others to succeed. And if one can do that, they tend to think of you when it's time for them to need your services.
I so personally, I've been through like this phase of my life where I like had to work on myself in order to help others. When you say help others, I think sometimes people get confused and they think that they can help others without helping themselves or vice versa. Could you talk about that a little bit, like those two things?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. One of the things that I love doing is I had a certain goal for last year to donate it to non-for-profits. And this year, I want to increase that, but I can't just do that because of my sheer willingness. I need to be able to have the revenues to justify that, to be able to do that. So just to answer your question, yes, I need to be stronger on the producer side to be a better philanthropist. But at the same time, to help others, I want to be able to, and I have been connecting them, making introductions. What's important to you, for instance? Who can I introduce you to that can essentially elevate your production and your revenues that much more?
And so I just want to give a testimonial because we had a conversation. We were supposed to do this interview yesterday, I think, and I dropped the ball a little bit. And but what we did at that time was we talked about some ways we could help each other, and you brought a lot of value to me. You gave me that input and that advice about joining a chamber of commerce, and you were looking for nothing from it. So I just want to give that testimonial to you. I really, really appreciate that. So thank you, and that's a testimonial for
Absolutely.
what you just said. So
Thank you.
you're welcome. So next is, what's the best compliment that you've ever gotten?
Um, just being generous, really, and thoughtful. That's nowadays consideration is really not as common as we should be seeing and hearing. So generosity and thoughtfulness was definitely goes a long way.
Would you say there's ever a point where you were too generous to someone?
Oh, absolutely. At one point, there was an instance where I was way too generous, and this individual took advantage of that. And I realized I can do one of two things. I could stop being generous and completely change my personality and do more harm to myself and others around me, or I could say, I learned. I'm taking something away from this individual, from this situation, but I am not going to allow that individual to change my personality. I'm just going to continue plugging away and plugging forward.
Okay. Would, in your perspective, right? Because I struggle with this a little bit myself. Sometimes I could be too generous. When do you realize that you're being too generous? Like, what's the light bulb that goes off? Like, okay, I need to stop. I need to pull back, or I need to change something here.
Two strikes. The first strike when someone really, when you're looking at that situation, how would a typical individual do it? Was there any intent? I usually give a benefit of the doubt to that individual, and then the second time it happens, that's it.
Okay. All right. We're going to move on to the next question. If you could go back and give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
I would say buy a duplex or a triplex. Don't wait.
Let me ask you, does it matter what market? Does it matter what price? Can we talk about some details on buying that duplex? How should we buy it?
Each person has their own vision of where, how. It doesn't really matter. I didn't know what my vision was going to be when I first bought my duplex, but when I saw a second acquisition and a third acquisition, I started to see a pattern. And then you could always either deviate from that pattern or continue to move forward. So you may don't wait to see a pattern, just do actions. That's all.
Okay, when you talk about that pattern of purchasing that duplex, what was that? Is it a positive pattern, negative? And what was that pattern?
In terms of the location, in terms of was it an A property, a B property, or a C property, or and tenants? So again, too many people start over analyzing a particular property and what it may potentially do for them. But again, at 18, just buy anything and learn from it and see where it goes.
So you mentioned something that always comes up in just entrepreneurship in general, analysis paralysis. Do you have any insight or input on how to kind of get over that analysis paralysis?
I see that quite a bit, both from first-time homeowners that want to, for occupants, as well as investors. They talk about various ratios, cash on cash return, and all these different things, and they become experts at all the terminologies. But unfortunately, that's all they become. And I say, don't worry about the terminology. Keep things simple, and get your toe in the water, then get your ankle in the water, and do it conservatively. There are conservative ways of doing it, and get someone to help you and hold your hand, someone that you could lean on with a text or call at 10 o'clock at night.
You answered that perfectly, because I wanted to next ask you about like mentorship, coaching. Like, what's your perspective on that?
On the real estate realtor side, I absolutely adore helping and holding hands. I do have colleagues that lean on me on that respect. They in turn help me with other things that I can't get my enough time to handle. And on the client side, I have folks that are recent college graduates, I have physicians that have been physicians for over 30 years, and all walks of life, folks that want to just, Jake, I have a question, I have a concern, whether it's a one-off text message or a phone call, I'm always available.
Thanks, I appreciate that. And could you talk about networking, because that's we met networking, right? We met through some local REIA groups. Can you just talk about the importance of networking and how it has influenced in your life?
Absolutely. I belong to probably five networking groups, some of which are either on a weekly basis, others on maybe on a monthly basis. But what it allows me to do is help each and every single person in that particular group to be connected to others. And people tend to see me with other groups, and they always ask me if I have a recommendation on this particular specialty or that specialty. So to be able to be a networker, it has been quite instrumental in both on the real estate side as a realtor, and then also as an investor, because now those clients or potential clients lean on me and say, hey, can you assist with something that may need another channel?
Thank you, Jake. I appreciate that. So we're coming up on the closing table. I got three questions for you around that, right? So the first question that we have is, what are three movies you'd recommend to the audience and why?
You know what? There's so many awesome movies, but really the only one that stands out, I would say, is Glengarry Glen Ross. You know what? Anything sales oriented, you
Sales
definitely
oriented.
want to. Yeah, you definitely want to see. Although it is an extreme of any um, sales atmosphere, and that's how sales folks get their bad reputation, if you would. But really having an understanding of what salespeople do and how they think is quite important, and to be able to relate to your consumer.
Okay, so with that, since we only have one movie, are there any books that you would recommend to the audience?
Going back to sales, I've always enjoyed Zig Ziglar.
Okay.
Him knowing and caring about his clientele, uh, no matter whether it's 20, 30, 40 years ago, it still resonates. The human connection. I highly encourage those that really want to learn how to truly connect with others in the sales and non sales environment.
Thank you, Jake. I appreciate that, and I want to give you a compliment. You are very concise, right? Concise. So you're to the point. I like that. I
Thank you.
appreciate that. Absolutely. So next question that I have for you, and then we got one more after, right? What's one question you wish I'd asked you, and how would you have answered it?
Huh. Um, you really
We got
did a
everything.
good job. I can't think of anything else that I would add.
Okay, Jake. I appreciate you. The final question that I have for you is, where can we learn more about you online?
Feel free to reach out to me either LinkedIn or just ask Jake realestate.com. You can anywhere pretty much, from Instagram at realtor Jake Toyberman.
Okay.
Anytime you have any questions.
Thank you, Jake. I really appreciate that. And we'll get all your links inside of the show notes, and then we'll kind of proceed from there. Jake, do you have any final closing statements?
One of the biggest things that I always try to share with others that lean on me for questions and as a resource, when tomorrow comes and you look back at today, will you have any regrets? So if you have a regret, go do it,
Got it.
because the worst thing in life is having those regrets. So what could have been, and I'm not willing to settle for those feelings.
Jake, really appreciate you. Thank you so much. That wraps up our questions, and we'll put everything in the show notes. Um, Appreciate you. Would love to have you back in the near future.
Thank you for having.
Absolutely.